this one also working? Great. Okay, let's make a start. Alright, so we saw that there were two inyonim.
Wait, could you
Oh yeah, we have to say that it's
the page?
it's yeah, so it's what's the date today? Kofdalad Mar Cheshvan, Beis, Tchilas Dibor Maskal Halalos Hashem Kol Goyim Tov Reish Ayin Dalad Omud Tov Kof Beis. So we saw that there were the two madrigas was Der Hagav. Just before we begin, just Shleimus Ayin. We mentioned last time about the usage of the expression Mazel V'noitzer, and we pointed out that there's no Vov in the Seder of the Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim, and on the contrary, that midah is called Noitzer Chesed. Put down from the Mekubarim, the Lamaz and other Forshei Zoya, that they write the Lashon as it is in the pasuk, Noitzer Chesed, Lelov. Ve'ilu in Tanya over there in the Chittas of a few days back in Keras HaKodesh, it was brought down also the expression V'noitzer, Mazel V'noitzer, and there was a tikkun in the. It's still not working.
It's working.
It's working, just adjusting.
Is there some problem?
It's a little bit low, just needs to raise it up a little bit.
Ah, you want to lower it down?
Whitney wants to raise it up.
He wants to lift it up?
Yeah. It's a bit unstable. Oh. Should be a little bit the same way here, no?
They seem to play with that thing, and so they sort of tip it one way or the other.
Which thing?
No, the screen itself, the screen, that's it. They sort of turn it back or forward. I think we have to have a bocha come down each time and do it. We waste a heck of a lot of time with this.
That's okay.
Okay, we got it.
I'll just have to get the bocha to come down every time.
The same.
Really, it's such a terrible waste of time. Is it working in a way that it's going to be worth anything? Otherwise, it's just a waste of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's now in the right position.
Yeah.
Right. So over there in Tanya, Rabbi also brought down the expression that Chochmah was nimshach. Chochmah Ratzil was nimshach mimazel v'noitzer. Over there, they brought in the Luach HaTikun, they brought there that it should be written Noitzer Chesed, not Mazel V'noitzer or Noitzer Chesed. And I looked up in the Pirush from Yosef Weinberg. He's got that, the Shurim and Sefer Tanya, and he brings all the horrors from the Rebbe. In a Keras HaKodesh, he's got hundreds of them, every couple of lines. It's horrors, Kodesh Kedushat Moshe. So over there, it appears that the Rebbe was the one who made that tikkun. That should be written V'noitzer Chesed, not V'noitzer. But what is a pillar is that later on in the same Megillah, if you look carefully, the Alter Rebbe mentions it twice later on in the same section. And there he says V'noitzer Chesed. He mentions both words, Noitzer Chesed, but he still has the fourth. In other words, in the places that we meet up with all through here in Samoa, in Ayin Beis and in other places, it's just written V'noitzer, without the Chesed. And Midah itself is Noitzer Chesed. So the shal is in two inyonim. First of all, why do we leave off the word chesed, and why do we put the vav in our passages? So over there, at the beginning of that of that shir in Tanya of that particular day, it's written v'noiter, mazel v'noiter, and it's on that the Rabbi is matachin should be written v'noiter, but it should be written noiter chesed. Aval mana said that a few lines further, almost in the same passage, the Alter Rebbe brings it with the word chesed written, but he still brings it with a vav, and he writes v'noiter, v'noiter chesed. So we see that the whole thing, just gets more and more complicated as it goes along. First of all, it's written v'noiter mit the vav without the chesed, and then later in the same passage he writes v'noiter mit the vav, but he puts in the word chesed, the Alter Rebbe. So it's of considerable interest. The whole inyan, there seems to be some insistence on mentioning that particular tikkun of the Yud Gimel tikkunim with a vav. Even and so v'noiter, we could say that it's written with a kitzur, it should really be written v'noiter chesed. Or this is it's a meaning kitzur is a v'noiter without the chesed. But where it's written with its full title, v'noiter chesed and a vav, well, that tends to. And it's interesting, over there in the Ha'oros from the Rebbe, he doesn't bring that the Rebbe was matakin anything there. It's only on the word v'noiter there, the Rebbe should be written, because that midah is noiter without a vav. And later the Alter Rebbe himself uses with a vav, noiter chesed with a vav, and there the Rebbe doesn't like, there the Rebbe wasn't matakin anything. So I suppose the Rebbe just relied on the fact that he was matakin the vav earlier. That the vav lefi divrei it would follow that maybe the vav shouldn't be there b'klal. Im kain tzarech iyun l'chayra. Why is it that all through these different passages and in other places you'll find it with a vav davke? Anyway, mi tzarech iyun lo yoto. It's interesting. But you have to mention the whole thing in the shir as we left me ha'ora on B'diuk in that same day in the Chittas. So you see the unbelievable Ashkocha Pratias. It's mamish terapil that things that come up in the day-to-day life, somehow connect themselves with the learning that we have in these classes. It's mamish a pele. I've seen many times the things that are happening in the general world, or things which are occurring in the Pasha Shavua, or inyonim which are muzkorim, b'kol minei inyonim hashayahim lo'isa ha'rego, lo'isa ha'yom, or lo'isa ha'shavua, come up in the classes in mamish maftia. It's mamish surprising, and he was a perfect example. I happened to notice my mind was troubled by the fact it was written v'noiter, and he on that day in the Tanya there was a tikkun from the Rebbe, with the Rebbe said, that the Rebbe, as it were, Kavilha agreed with my ha'ora. Well, mi iyun adayin lo yotza, because it's like almost a tikkun of it inside the Tanya itself, but he still holds very obstinately to the vav. So, we saw that there were two madrigas in Chochmas Timur, and we saw that the tzinor, as we might call it, for which Chochmas Timur is miskala lamata, is mazel v'noiter, mazel noiter chesed, however we'll call it. And so therefore we said that b'diuk, like we found in Chochmas Timur atzmoi shtei madrigas. One was mitzad the makif Yosha, and the other was mitzad the makif Chayza. We found those two inyonim pnimis v'chitzenis al derech loshen hakloli in Chochmas Timur itself. We have to say that in mazel v'noiter, hiyos mazel v'noiter is the tzinor through which the amshocha from Chochmas Timur goes into the ne'atzolim shelamatu mimena, and becomes the hisavas eventually of Chochmah. But that was the kasha. How can it be a hisavas from Chochmah from such a level which is mamish atik? So we have to say that in that Tzinor, which is Mazel v'Neitzer, there's also two inyonim of Chitonius and Pneumius in the Mazel itself. So we went on to say that there's Yuvan, we saw the Alpi Mashkos, Moki Macher, She'et Bechinas Amshocha Sebesei Dishtaucheles, Yesh Amshocha Habo Mimochen Gavoim Eid, Yelamaila Miseda Hishtaucheles, and nonetheless a Ko Uchinas Pnimi. So what we're going to say is that the union of Seder Hishtaucheles, that'll be shared to the first Madrega in Chokmas Timoah and in Mazel v'Neitzer, and then the union Shalamayla Miseda Hishtaucheles will be, however, the Nakuda being that Hakur Bechinas Pnimi, that even that union Gavoim Eid B'Sher Shei, which is the Rebbe called it earlier, Moichin Gavoim, you have a Nailim B'Yesa, even they Nitrochim Lahimoshech Alidei Pnimi. Their Inin is also Shocha B'Derech Pnimi. We're not talking about Inyonim which Nishorim B'Chinas Makiv, or Nishorim or Nimshochim B'Makiv Al Tauseles. Now we saw that they were Mamisha Amayin, the Leosid, that the Inyan Atzmi is Nimshach Davki Derech Shinoirois and Inyonim which are shaykh to say the Hishtaucheles. In other words, that the Inyan Ha'atzmi Haki Elyoin will be Nimshach and is Nimshach Davke B'derech HaTzinoirois of say the Hishtaucheles. In other words, or Pnimi Behechlet, the etimini from Pnimi. So we saw that those are the two inyonim from Hadrogas Hishtaucheles and Lamaila Mishtaucheles. And we saw that the Seder of Hadrogas Hishtaucheles, well, that was from Chochma Da'atzilas Labina, or Labina Lazor, B'derech Ilava Olul. And we saw that was Hishtaucheles, Sfiras B'Sfiras Atzmon, Shahim P'chinas Ilava Olul, Kavur in the famous Igeras HaKodesh chapter 20. V'gam Masha Chochma. Now here's the Chiddush B'kol HaKeta Hazeh. Masha Chochma Mikabeles Mehakeser Gam Kein Nikro Seder Hishtaucheles. That what Keser, that what Chochma Da'atzilas, meaning Chochma Hagluya, Chochma as a spirit in Atzilas, is Miskala from Keser, and that's not B'derech what we are normally accustomed to call Hishtaucheles, the Hainu Iliva Olu, the Chiteni Shabbatachtoin, Sheba Elyon Nasa Pnimis Latachtoin, the whole Hislapshus of the Elyon in the Tachtoin. So the Savas of Chochma from Keser is Loiboivim Kozer. And after Cain, it's Nikra Hishtaucheles, and that's going to be a major point in the whole development of Bio. So he said, "V'gam Masha Chochma Mekabeles Mea Keser Gam Kein Nikro Seder Hishtaucheles." Hagam. The Kabbalah is a Chochma Keser Urak Mipchinas Sairis Da'arich Ampin Da'abo Yoinek Mimazlo. We're soon going to see that that's our Chitonius of Chochmas Timoah. That's how it is shared to the Gilui Eitzah Mikablim, or it's a Cholas Am Shocha Shalamayla Mikablim, of a Sof it will be Miskabel by the Mikablim. That's what we call the union of Chitonius, Chochmas Timoah, which is Shayach Behechlet to Arichampin. Because Chochmas Timoah is Chochma Shebarich. Chochma is Chochma Shebakeser. It's just that the Chiddush of Moichas Timoah, Chochmas Timoah, is that being as it is Chochma of Arich, in that is Miskala Pnimis Atik Yoimim. That's the whole Chiddush. In other words, that in Chochmas Timoah, like we pointed out, we've got two inyonim. One is a gila, which is Lagamish Leibim Koimoi. In other words, it's not Shayat there, but the Hainu Ayin, which is completely Gilui Pnimis V'atzma Sein Seif. And then we have Ayin in Chochmas Timoah, Eishu Ba'arich, which is Shayat to the Inin von Arich. The Hainu Ayin from Keser, aber Chitonius HaKeser, in a way that Inin from Keser is Shayat to the Esesvir. And that'll be even closer in the coming chapter. Been foolish that's Hamaduba Eisha Keser is Nimno Beina as the Sphira. But that's a Klovitzinian of Ari. So there was said about that albeit that that's Chitanius Keser, of a since Ko so for so, it's Keser, and it's still an Indian Shalamaila and the Gili Proti in the Spheres. The only way that there can be a Savas of Chochma, Abo, Datzilas, from that Madrege is through an Indian Shal Siders, albeit it's already a Chitanius in the Siders. Over Sokosof it is Shocha, which is not what we are accustomed to call Iliva Olol or Histauselas. And it's not Iliva Olol. And yet nonetheless the Chiddush is that it's Histauselas. Shasayres, hu rach moisrei moichin. Umizer levod nimsha pechokmo bina, v'loi me'akesa atzmoi mamish. It's well known that the Sidus is the union from what we discussed this in last week's class, the union from moisrei moichin. In other words, that the Gabi, the Amiti union of the Gile HaMoyach, or that's only a leftover of a Moisa. We brought the famous Dugma Lazer, which brought down in Derek Mitzvah, but again to the Tiklachas HaNozir, what the Rebbe brings over there in the union from Aisik, in Gashmis, Panosa Gashmis, that Lefamim Odom can be. He can be toya be'atme, and he can be misasik in the gashmis, but even kozer that he thinks that his moichin are really being poil in the Indian, and not the birchas Hashem is. So what happens there is what is only moisterous, it's only chitanius, a kli, what is necessary to do something. He thinks that's the ikka. And in other words, that those moichin which are required for him to be put into the asik are really only moisterly moichin. They're not amitius. In other words, the things which are only shaya to a thing which is outside the amitis mahus, or that's called moisa. The amitis mahus of Adam is dveikis in lamay himeno. The asik in inonim gashmiyim, or that's Ayin only for moisa bilvad benegeh elov mitzad etzem atzmusay. The same thing. That's what Nimsha from Keser to be Mahava Chokma is only a Moisa, a Indian from Chitanius, or Al Choponim Chimtum Otzum Bilvad. But nonetheless, we're going to say the Chiddush is that that's also Ishtau Shalas. Or Miser Levad Nimsha B'Chokma Ubina, V'lo Me'Keser Atzmoi Mamish, because it's only a Moisa. V'im kein ena k'moy me'achokma labina or me'abina lamidas. In kein, it's not the normal concept of ishtalshelas, but derek ilava olo. For example, from moichin lamidas or midas le malchus, yes, or from chokma labina and bina lamidas. Now this is not seisa was in Mavur in other places that mebchina agas you can taina that in Emerson the Amshocha Michachma Labina is not Derech Ilava Ol. And you can also tell that the Amshocha from Moichin Bechlal into Midas is not really the Amitis in van Ilava Ol. Avavu Pikain, Habi Makaimis, we bring them as Dugmois Le Ilava Ol. It's a simon that Misad the Etzem Amshocha and the Etzem Oifen a Gilui one to the other, then it is a Ilava Ol. Mitzad the shorish of each of these inyonim, Chachma and the shorish Amidas, it's hard to call them mamish ilava all because they have atzmi inyonim in the shorish atzmi, which makes them very different, and you can't really call them kshurim zebezeh b'derech ilava all. But in there is galus lapuyo by the Odom benegel gile etzloi of the inyonim, how they're supposed to be miskala, the moichin from one to the other, and then those moichin into his midas, then we can't call them iliva'ol. So that's what we're saying here, that in Amshocha from Chochma to Bina, or me Bina lamidas, sha'atzmis ha-Chochma nimshech u'mislavish ba'Bina, v'chein me Bina lamidas. Yeah, what do we mean by atzmiyas? Shaharei belois boinen es haseichel lo yeh leides amida. Ki im alidei is bonen es davke. Shekein hu b'midas de tikkun. In other words, that the atzmi of the moichin and mislabish in the midas is the nakuda that if you didn't have the inyan for nisboninus, then it wouldn't be the inyan for midas cloud. In other words, that means without the moichin doing what they are, then you wouldn't have midas cloud. They just wouldn't be miskala, which means that we have to say that the inyan the product of midas al yidei moichin is a inyan achmi from the moichin. Even though we're going to tell you that it's not mamish achmi as a moichin, but nonetheless, the li isaskis on the part of the moichin, you wouldn't have midas. Wherever there's a isaskis and a necessity for that inyan to be poil inyonoi, that you should have another inyan, and that means that inyan must be be'ezishu oifen nitfas. He must be be'ezishu derech nitfas in the inyan. But that's like we bring always the marshal of Yisaskis in what we call oil of a shefa, for example. We say that shefa from a mashpia is something that he's misasik to give. And therefore, the inyan from ilava is more b'derech shefa than oil. That means that the moichin are misasik to give forth the inyan for midas. That's the seder in midas to tikkun. That's already a remez. The midas have a shorish in toyu, but they don't come mitzad isboninus. The midas have a take of agilui, each one in its own inyan, beli the hoiroa from the moichin. However, the seder in tikkun is davke ba'ifan koseh. Im kein harei b'midas yesh bohem min haseichel. Since the seichel is misasek, beli isaske beli tfisa as you might say, and tilde on the part of the moichin, you wouldn't have midas, then the moichin must be in some way nimtsoim and poelim betoich hamidas. The truth of the matter is, shezeu haor levor. That's also only a haora. In other words, we're running back the other way now, that we're trying to say that's a kiro hisaskisachmi on the part of the ila to produce the olo. That's what we're saying, that viladeha saskis of the moichin, there wouldn't be any midah. However, says the Rebbe, everybody knows that what eventually is mislavish in the midah from the moichin and causes the inyan of the yisraelis of the midah is the gabi the emissary, his bonin is also only a ha'ora b'vad. And that's the bechain, as the Bonan goes, the Yerida, and then there's the inyan from the hefsek be'emter. You have the what called the ishtemim as be'emter of the moichin, and then become a bechain bilvad. And the bechain is bekoshim is labish in the midah and mo'era the midah. As far as he said that im kein lachel is bedugma to the cyrus again, it's only a ha'ora and moetis bilvad, which is nimshach from the moichin into the midah. So he says harei im v'im yoshezeu ha'ora levad mikol mokim harei ha'ora hu ha'ora samoichin mamish. Nonetheless, albeit it's only a ha'ora, but it's a ha'ora not b'derech moiser like we saw in the inyan from moiser ha'moichin, but it's a ha'ora from the etzim function of what moichin are. It's only that what moichin do undergoes what you might call a tamtis. It goes down through a series of inyonim and becomes mitzumtzum in a way that it can talk to midas. Pirush adover, that the bechain is just another very brief and what you might call informative way to midas of saying what the etzem is boninus was. That's an akudas ayin. In other words, that even though it's not a ha'ora, but it's a ha'ora hamagala, it's not a ha'ora which is just a leftover and doesn't really tell you what the original thing was. Like we said that moisere is just things which are not ma'atim b'chlal to the pnimis ha'moisei of the inyan. The ha'ora from the moichin is what we might call a ha'ora atzmi. It's a tequila like b'derech tamtis, a brief an informative statement to a more self-interested party like Midas of what the Etzem Mizboninus was all about. It's not a Dover B'derek Nafila Klau. Yeah, it's like a Yinufin Istamtzumus to bring you the Emerson message. So therefore, said the Rebbe, Henochanami, it's Take a Ha'ora, but it's a Ha'ora from the Moichin Mamish. And that's the Bitui Ha'ora, so Moichin Mamish. Okemoi Nakudas Askola, Arihu Seichel Mamish, Shemizlabish Basog. So the Rebbe said, let's go back to the beginning that we described. From Chokma to Bina, we said was Ilava Olo, and it was from Staushels Mamish. So the Rebbe said that what is Nimshach and what teaches into from Chokma in Bina is, and why do I say teaches? It's well known, the expression Melamedes. We heard about that earlier in the Hemshech. Although Yachas between Chokma and Bina, that what leads into Bina is the Nakuda. What the Nakuda is already a low level in Chokma. That's what we call Yesod Abba. It's only the unit in Yesod Sheba Chokma, but the Nakuda is already a teaching point which can go into a Makabal like Bina, where it's already going to become a Ayin Eitzel Odom, not just a Gilui Atzmi of the Ayin Kamoshu Mitzad No Mailamat. That was once again the same principle, albeit a Nakuda. But that Nakuda carries in itself all that was really there in the original Gilui in Chokma. And what it does is it unfolds itself through the amazing power that Hashem planted into Bina, that it can unfold things. But it unfolds the Amitis Ayin. So after a lot of Shtadlers, the mensch can come to the Amitis Noisei of the Hasogim. How it was in Chochma Mitosa. So there was the Rebbe, the Amshocha, the Nakuda into Bina is Amshocha Atzmius in a certain way, even though Le'idoch it's only a Ha'ora. And so the same thing is, that's how it is from one Moyach to the other, from Moyach HaChochma to Moyach HaBina. So he said the same thing, V'chein mi Bina Lamidas, Nimshach ha'oros ha'seichel. In other words, what comes into Bina is a ha'ora from what originally was there in the very Achmis Agilui of Pnimis HaChochma. In other words, what was the original Mitius Agilui from the Etzem Moyach into the Moyach, and later when those different derivations, ha'ora that comes into the Midas. In other words, that the Midas, they react to what was the original message of the Moyachim. It's not just a thing which comes b'derech nafila v'hatofa bilvad. That's the amitis pnimius hanoisa of the Inyan, but that's a special form of ha'ora, and that's what we might call mavur b'mekayim sacherim ha'ora atzmis. It's only a ha'ora b'goloi, but the teichen is a teichen atzmi, because it's really just another way of saying for your sake what was there in the Shoyer Shoyelian. And so that was the Rebbe, that's the Maila in Amshocha Mederach Ilava Va'olo, that you have the Ha'ora Mamish of each Koyach into the other. Uliyo Miperekuf Mem Hei Va'elach Nizboa Sheesh Bezech Chiluki Madreges. In the Oifen of Gilui of a Ila to a Ol, and how much Pnimius of the Ila is miskala into the Ol, we found over there that there were Chiluki Madregas. Vahainu, in what way did we find that? Shebishtal Shelas Asfiras, Shelatzerach Habrio, Lo Yesh Mimahus Ila Baha'olo. Avo Madregas Atzilas Gufa, Harayesh Mahus Ha'ora, Miha Ilo Biha Olo. What over there we spoke Barichas Bekitza, that the Alter Rebbe talks in that Igeras that we spoke earlier, Igeras Kof, of the Mshochas Asfiras Basfiras Atzmon in Oilam Atzilus Kufa, and he calls that Ilava Olo. He says that Ilava Olo is the Stausus of the Sfiras Basfiras Atzmon. And over there in Kuf Memei, the Rebbe makes a difference where the Istausus of the Spheres is in order to be nimshach the oil from Atzilus into Bria. In other words, that there should be nimshach oil derech Malchus to Atzilus into Chochmah the Bria. Over there, it's a more chitonius inyan in the Ishtausels Atzma of the Sphere. And we made a whole chiluk over there that there's a difference when Atzilus is being Mishtausel for its own sake. As you might say, the spheres are just being Megala and Nimshach, one from the other. Kilo legilo atzmi b'toich Atzilus, or if they're being Mishtausel or Mishgala, one to the other, in order to eventually go over into Bria. That Gufa is two different types of Ishtausel. Ulai, but there are possibility, but there are hefshe. Possibly, I didn't have time to be in being, in the famous drush in Torah in drush Rosh Hashanah on Yontif Shel Shabbos, Yontif Shel Rosh Hashanah Shel Chol Yesh B'Shabbos. That's what some of us all about. It's over there, the Rebbe in that famous drush in the Torah, over there he says there are two different types of Ilah Va'ol. And he talks about Ilah Va'ol, which is more b'derech kilo makifim. It's mashma over there, the makifim, in such a way that they're nimshachim kilo zeh b'toich zeh, even atzmi. And then there's another type of Ilah Va'ol where it's just that the chitzein shebetachtein is nasa pnim shel elin. And he talks over there being that's Ayin chitzonius in Ilah Va'ol gufa. So ulai yesh letavik and lekashish nei inyonim ha'elu lefi ha'mavur lefi ha'mavur sham. But there's a higher form of Ilah Va'ol, well, that's within the spheres themselves, and that's like a gilui and a isavus of one sphere from the other, like we see in the Avodas Ha'odam, that through the pool of his moichin over kosher, or that gives rise to a inyan for midas and kill those, they wouldn't be there and begolo if not that inyan. That if you want misboinen, then you just don't have the middles. Yesh leima that's a inyan from Ishtausos Asfiras B'Sfiras Atzman. Or when it's we want to use those spheres already, that from them there should be nimshach hashpor into nifrod mamish bo'if and acher legamrei. So then einachadam we have a more into orthodox or chitonius type of inyan from Ilah Va'ol, lefia Ilah Va'ol shebederagim madabli malzeh. Kein yesh leima b'derech havshatos the beer. Also upon him, the Rebbe says that when it's that is Stauscheles for the Shabbos of Elam HaBriah, lo yesh mimahusa ila ba'ol. And it's very well known. It's very well known. Upon him, that when the Rebbe Nishmas Ayin in his drushim uses the expression lo yesh, and he just doesn't say ain. The lo yesh is not proper Hebrew. You don't say Lashon Kodesh lo yesh. You say ain. When he says lo yesh, then he means mamish to yishol to mikol v'kol. Behechlet ain devak kazeh. I mean, it's interesting that he says in that seder of the Ilah Va'ol, lo yesh mimahusa Ilah b'ha'ol. Meaning that in the first oifen we could maybe say that there is a mahus. If it's not mahus, then what's the whole mile of it? So we have to say that in the first oifen, then there's nimshach mahus ulai b'derech tzimtzum mesuyam about mahus, and in the second oifen it's only ha'ora. In that ha'ora there's also a hidden me'ain from the original inyonim as they are b'shorch. That's Kain Yesh Leima. That's why Shoyl Mikol V'Kol, meaning that the first Ilah Va'ol is a very high and delicate form of Ilah Va'ol. V'Tzodik is bonin as V'Tzodik Iyun Nimrat to understand the dachistic chilik between them. And we'll have to be chayzach that inyan over there in Kuf Memhei more bariches just to be koil at the inyanim hamavuarim sham. Yesh leima, this is the close kavana. Aval b'madreges atzilas gufa hari yesh mahus ha'ora mea ila biha mahus ha'ora. Once again, he makes it for ha'ora, but he says mahus. In other words, Not ha'oras ha'mahus, but mahus ha'ora. In other words, that every reader from one daga to another is always a ha'ora. Or there can be mahus ha'ora, or there can be a ha'ora from mahus. In other words, the words mahus ha'ora, that means that that's the biggest you can give. Better than that you can't give. And mashkin ha'ora is only just a ha'ora from what you could really give. Kein Shlomo does it up here. Uleficha, Nikra Ishtaushus Ilava Ol, and therefore it's called Ilava Olu. Mashen Kein. Me'akeser Elach Chokma, Sham Shochahu, Bechin Silas Levad, Harizerach Ha'ora Di Ha'ora. Oh, is the word. In other words, that even in that Chitzainis of Ilava Olu, what we call it only a ha'ora samahus, it's not mahus ha'ora, but it's only ha'ora samahus. Over so it's a ha'ora one time round. It's still a ha'ora which carries with it, like we said, the original message, Beis Yoevin. It's the Ayin still of the original. Over here it's only a ha'ora di ha'ora. Now it's well known that in a ha'ora di ha'ora, you don't really see the original. Well, that's the whole idea of what we call Shal Tula, for example, a horror which goes through a parsa and things of that nature, even though it's the same word, it's the same word as before the parsa that comes after the parsa, it's the same word, but it's really not recognizable, not nikakukach, what's it all about, and what's the Indian business. That's the concept of horror di horror. So therefore the Indian from side is a horror di horror. Therefore comes with the dilug, and kilo adova ha-mafsik be'emtze with the ganze ariches bezer. Apikein gama isavus ha-chochma miyakese nikro am shochab shebesaydi ishtaushles. That's also called ishtaushles. What the uniform, it's brought in a place, and it says the word ishtaushles is called ishtaushles, which means a shalshelas, which means that things have got a connection one with the other. But the original kilo source of the word ishtalshes is from the word shilshel. The shalshel means to like let things down. The original word in Lashon Kodesh shilshel, the shalshel, in the Mishnah in Masechta Beitzador, Mishalshelin, state of Mishalshelin as Akupis, I forget exactly the Lashon in the Mishnah, which means that you let them down, you sort of let them drop or droop downwards, and then they're caught by somebody else and they go further, or they fall onto another level and they go further. Yeah, that's called l'shalshel. And so the whole idea of ishtalshel is that we want things to go down. We have to have them going in a whole process where it'll be a continuous, what you might call descent. And how are we going to get that? Through these ha'oras. Yeah? We attain it through the infant ha'oras. So we don't completely run away from ourselves. And therefore, ha'ishtalzus is always a certain kesher with the original. It never completely can be. Therefore, the difference between the Yesh Mi'ayin ve'ilava all. The Chiddush is that even though this is Sidus, and Sidus are to a certain extent, like a break with the original, nonetheless, that's still called Ishtalshus. Even though it's not Shul in the normal movement. Nonetheless, it's called Ishtalshus. That is the whole step-by-step process. Liyos achokman imshechas rak mibchinas Sidus levad the arichan piece. In other words, that's the way when the Eibishter fixed originally there would be what he called Seder v'hadroga, then he fixed it that way that every now and then he would have a severe step. It wouldn't just be a step from a step, but that's the word hadroga, but it would be a kfitza mesuyemes, not completely and utterly, but not b'derech nafila, chas v'sholem, a kfitza in the hadroga gufa, and then it would start over again and go down to another end of that series of Esa, and then it would start again. And that's called Seder Hadroga, even though every 10 times round, after every kilo of the Esa Spheres, then you have a further Indian of Siders. But the Siders are a more drastic Yerida, not in the oven that we just saw, even in the Chitania is a village. So therefore the Rebbe says, who should do it? Don't come to us that you like, in a way, you like having your cake and eat it too, as you might say. You might say, what is Ishtausel? Ishtausel where everything's linked up. And you say, well, it's not exactly. There's every now and then it's not linked up. It comes in even where something much higher manages to, to smuggle itself through, or something from Kesser, Mamish gets into the Seder here, and therefore we have a thing like Chokhmah, which Chokhmah is well known as a paradox. Chokhmah is always, on the one hand it's a koech, on the other hand it's a uluvali veins ulose. I mean, it's well known, the two always opposing aspects in Chokhmah. Shebekol madrege shehi. Chayva says that the Rebbe come to us that every now and then we, as it were, we smuggle through a in which doesn't seem to be Ishtausel and not Hadroga, but we say no, that is that's Hadroga. So how can you do that? You can't sort of have your cake and eat it too, or eat your cake and have it too. So the Rebbe now says a wondrous thing where I'm going to say this and the Rebbe said we have to say that that's what the Eibishter wanted l'chatchila. You can't really do that. You can't really say Ishtausel b'derech midas and all those sort of things. Then all of a sudden say, oh, Cyrus, me kesset to Chokhmah. Oh yeah, that's also in the same game. What's it's another game. It's another ball game. You say, oh no, it's in the exact. It's all in the same inyan. So we have to say that was because the Eibishter wanted to say that every now and then there would be a break in the Seder and something higher and more essential would smuggle itself through, as you might say, in such a way that that's also called Seder v'hadroga. V'hainu, said the Rebbe, shekein hu shenimdad yetchila b'retzeina yisbarach bo'efen ha'isavas the Seder Ishtausel. In the whole Isavas of Seder Ishtausel, right originally in the inyan of the Eibishter's Rotzen, Shachokhmah tiyeh am shochosa v'yisavusa mibchinas Cyrus. That's what he wanted right from the beginning in his Rotzen for the whole Seder of Ishtausel. He wanted that Chokhmah would be the Amshocha and the Yisavas from Cyrus. That's what he wanted originally. I say he stelt, as you might say, the whole Seder of his will. In Cain, Asher Yisava Chokhmah b'chinas Cyrus, ain't him mipnei shu yemayor shelamayla miged Ishtausel. Mayacha shemitchila ola Cain. But it's saying now, Poshet be Sabbath Ishtausel. If you do the close the Aliyah Sarotzen, who Masha Shayat Ishtausel. But Kachol Beretzeni is Baraba, even Ishtausel, the Sabbath Chokhmah Yiyah Mepchina silence. Harei Kol Zehu Adrogas Ishtausel. Now look at that. That's like playing not fair in a way. That's like, it's almost like, in an argument, all of a sudden becoming, how do you call it, you're not allowed to do that in argument. What do they call it? You become all of a sudden I've forgotten the word. You stand on your principle and say, well, you just have to accept that. I can't argue about that. I show my listeners that I'm not prepared to discuss that point in a way. So then you're like going against the kloliha ma'aser matter. You understand? So therefore we said so. He said, don't ask any questions. I look at Islam, let me say this. No, it's not. Why is it not? Because that's what he wanted. He said originally that would be Seder Ishtausel. Therefore, even though it's not really, I mean, Cyrus from Arichanpin into Chokhmah is not what you normally call Ishtausel. Yeah, that's what he wanted. And that's how he put it out. And since he wanted that way, no, you can't argue. That is the Adroga from Seder Ishtausel. Because that's what he wanted. Kach hu ratzah. But Kach, when the Eibishter decided what would be Hadroga, that's what he decided. In other words, the Hadroga would go down every few Madregas, and then it would become a slightly different and beyond type of Hadroga in Hadroga. It's not Hadroga. Oh yes, it is. It's Hadroga because he said that's going to be Hadroga. Remember, that's Hadroga. Sorry about it. He said it's going to be. He wanted it should be Hadroga. It is Hadroga. But even die Staus, es haben sich auch gefunden, Hariko sehr, Hadroga sich Staus. Also, Heinu, she'ein moke am shocher miprin shel maila mi Staus. No. The moke that am shocher from Keser into Chochma is not from la maila mi Staus. For Klolas am shocher, he al piratzveni is bora binyan a Staus. Okay, go through that one. So listen, we're going to learn a few lines further. We're running a bit short of time. We'll learn a few lines further, and maybe they'll help us. You know, it's not good to cheat, but if we go just a little bit further, I think it'll help us understand what is the whole pneumius of that in. Oh, but there is a thing called the Lamaila Mitzvah. Oh yes, we're just saying that what we were talking about is not. But there is such a thing. Hainu mashenim atik. That comes from atik. What does atik mean? Ner takver v'nivdal umi moiches timor. That's stuck here from the same chokmas timor. That's very fascinating. Here's another one of these things. I'm throwing it also into the table. Sometimes the Rebbe calls it chokmas timor. Sometimes he calls it moiches timor. That's maddening. And the same in the Likutei Torah. You'll see, all of a sudden, you'll be going along, boom, Chokmas Timor, another line further, Moiches Timor. They mean the same thing. They mean almost the same thing.
Isn't Chokmas Timor in Ari and Moiches Timor in Atik?
No. There's no Moiches Timor in Atik, man. Atik is way smaller by Atik. There's nothing in Atik. Atik is Tachas Sapshitas. All we're saying here is that in Chochma Sheba'arich, which is Chochmas Timor, there's a gilui of Atik. Atik finds himself over there. Chochmas Timor is Moiches Timor. It's the same thing. Ain't Moiches Timor. I'm not talking about in Atik. He's talking Moiches Timor in Atik.
He said Moiches Timor, which is a previous Keser.
Come on, man. We've been learning the whole time that we're talking about how it is in Chochmas Timor, inside Arik. Chochma to Arik, dort in the ganze Chiddush, that there is Atik also. Anyway, so he says, Moiches Timor, shehu pnimis hakeser. We said that the emes of pnimis hakeser is called Chochmas Timor. That's what we were telling the whole time. Mashenim befinas toisefes oyer, befinas ischatches, shaloi hoyo tchila ba'aliyas harotzen al seida ishtautzles. There's the spirit. And he said, this lamaila mi seida ishtautzles, or this pnimius. That's really the same madrega, but we're saying now that in that kufa is this pnimius. Ich weiß was. It's the makif, the chayzim and the other miles that we've seen. If that gets moving, if that comes down, then that's already something that wasn't there originally in the Aliyah Sarotz, and I'll say this time. That wasn't there. Wasn't sure. By the way. שנמשך על ידי הלא הזמן ותשובה מיומכת הליבה. That's not going to move, Cloud. That's not even there. Nobody planned that. But if the Makablim Lamata, if they really get cracking and they really do something, so then it'll come. It'll be misgalim. Mimochim gavoya me'uid shelamayla mihadroges aistov. That's really lamayla mihadroges. Ach mikol mochim gamam shochazu muchrach. Gam kein leire derer hat shinoiris asairis the Yudgimotchuni dikno. It's also going to come through the pnimiyas. Yafu pikei nikrozela mailam ist aus seidist aus kiven shesherish am sochazu mi reish the loy is yado. Mi moicheste stimo os an reish the loy is yada. Reish the loy is pnimisati. Mamish. Article. Says the Rebbe, this is already an Ayin, but nobody planned that. That hasn't been planned. Lo hayal ze aliyah sarot. That wasn't an aliyah sarot. What's going on? It's happening. Yeah. So we have to say that. For everything there was an aliyah sarot. But there was an aliyah. The aliyah sarot here was that if it'll happen, then it'll be. The rotzen allows that should be. There's a rotzen which permits azam what you might call chapanish. Azam chapanish the kedusha kabul. Go to higher. In other words, so don't come to it. Mamish advar pele was adayin tzorich harbi iyun. Kol Ayin that's it. But who? That the Eibishter made a seder which is called the Shtaushelis, and that goes all the way back, because these things have a sure as Pnimi, or the Maila Miatzma, they have way back in the Yosef Nea Tzimtzum, and in Aachen, and the Yosef Nea Tzimtzum, and way back into the, Etzim Kolubi Amoya, Shalobu Kolubi Amachachat, all the way back into Etzim Mokia. In other words, originally the Eibishter had a rotzen, and the rotzen, Atzmi, Lamiti added itself to Bechinas. A rotzen which was a rotzen lepuyo, lekvoya inyoni. And this rotzen said, here we go, and we want kach for kach for kach for kach, and it's going to be kach for kach, ad mi mokia harishan, all the way down, ad soft color. You know, you do a soft color, ishtauselis, is Helama say. Yeah. And even that Yesh Me'ayin at the end of the whole Seder Ishtauselis is not Ishtauselis, but the whole Ishtauselis was only to get to Zah oil, which would be able to be Mislavish Petzeh. It's also Sha'at Mamish Toilam. And that was on and David said, this is what we want, and this is how it's going to be, and in our rotten there's no messing around. If that's what we want, David says, what's an Ayin? Ayin Shinuim V'Ayin Kunzim V'Ayin, that goes mamish all the way up from the highest Makot all the way down. It's a Lamahu Asad Devak, Kach Hu Rata. In other words, that's like the whole idea of Ishtaus. It starts right at the top, goes all the way down. Just to get into that Ishtaus, how did he get into that? Then the Alter Rebbe and the Arizal Taina, that there was huge Tzumim, it wasn't Ilva Olo Ishtaus, Mamish from the Atzmas. But in a way it is, because the Rotzen, and that's what those big Mukabarim Taina, amongst them were certain ones who wanted the Taina, even the Kesser was like part of Ishtaus, it's all Ishtaus. So in a way that Kola Inyan Kosupoi, Machazik or Matstik Inyan Zeh, for even Masuya. For even Masuya, it's Matstik that in. In other words, the Eibishter made a whole amazing chain link from himself all the way down to the end, and that goes with the Seder Mesuda. It's just that every now and then he made in that Zamin to hop, so that it wouldn't go after Shita Achas, called Hamadrais. He wanted that even in that Seder, that you should be able to see the Mailomet, you should be able to see that there should be a thing called Chochmah. What Chochmah is the big trick. The Chochmah on the one hand is already something, but it hears how there's Lamailom something. It hears Lagami Lamailom Zich. Let's pull the beetle. Can you do a Chochmah pull a beetle? Should we call Ayin Yonim? Come over. That's what the Rebbe is saying, that's what you've got, a jump. Well, that's part of what he wanted, that everything should be connected one to the other, because he wants in that connection one to the other, that there should be certain let-throughs whereby it goes in a higher way to cause a form of Hereg Shabitl, Pirushadova, that even though that goes all the way down, and that's how Elam Yahadikot Kamin Hoge Noheg, that's the way the world runs, and that's the way the world is, and it's a high world, and there's even to a certain extent a certain get of Yediyas Elikus, Alidei Chochmah, Alidei Cyrus, Alidei Keser, all sorts of good things are benim to them. But ultimately speaking, he wanted to allow, and the Abish, as it were, hoped, and that's what he hoped. He made a rotzen that there can be a lot higher than that. Incomparably higher than that, and that he placed in our hands. Oh, in other words, that if we'll hold ourselves beyond that whole union, what these guys wrote, if we'll hold ourselves beyond that whole union, and we'll go up in a way that it will be tshuva mi kadaliva, because maybe a little bit of tshuva and a little bit of, gesunde Kneicha, you can also deal with Seidish Taushas. You can also have a good world, a kosher world, of Seidish Taushas. Nowadays, I don't know how that would possibly fit in. Nowadays, the whole place is just crackers. But I'll how do we get to a union that there'll be a Ur Chodesh, what we called before? Yeah? And here he uses the expression, what do we call before? Ur Chodesh. It's not in that whole game. Not even inside us from Kesed. It's not in that whole game. It's another ball game. And on that there was no Elias Rotzen. He didn't fix anything on that. He didn't want that, as it were. He just wanted that you should want it. He wanted that should come, but he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it until you do it. In other words, he wants it, but he doesn't. And so there, it's not in the it's not in what they give you in a menu. It's not on the menu. It's not on the menu. And yet the biggest suda will be the suda Slaviosha will be when we go out of that whole union. Like so it's piddly plus. That there's a whole union of all the elements that didn't need to be. That's also a tremendous kesser, because there you can form a kesser with it. You can know what's going on. Oh, but once you know about that, you've got to go beyond it. Nobody wants you to stop with that. Oh, but believes it, and it's got all of its clothing, and it helps you out, and it allows you, and it helps you to function. Every now and then there's a jump, and those jumps give you chokmah. The chokmah is the whole union. Chokmah is different. Ein l'shaya l'taya, and it comes from kesed. So all that is to help you link up and know things. Once you know them, you've got to get cracking. If you just sit on your merits, then you'll stay in Seidish Taushas. Even with limited Torah, even with alle gute Sachen. You'll stay inside Seidish Taushas. If I'm you'll be in that rotzen. There was Aliyah's rotzen, a big thing. Davar yafeh. And it's all the way down, and it's if I'm yesh latzik, it's at even those that they tainted, that everything was kilo b'derech ilavolo to a certain extent, kachazeh. And then there's a inyan legamrei l'mayla mizeh. Oh, that's totally enough. That what the Arizal says, that everything is totally b'yisarut l'tata, means yisarut l'tata, which is l'fi seidah b'surim. Yeah, they call Ayin what he knows and he does, I'm not playing it down. But Gavi the Rebbe, Malach Mashiach, it's what you call ta-ta-ta. Like the Rebbe, they put down, they print up this thing for Kof Machers, just in there, print up something, Choveret, with the Sikhs of the Rebbe, about what's going to help bring Mashiach, and then the famous Sikha, the Rebbe Rashab Bimului, Kola Sikha, about Chayel and Beis Tovim, Kola Eitzer, Beis Tovim, V'chula. You see it, it's a very fascinating little Choveret. It's got all the Sikhas and the Rebbe says. The Rebbe says that we're not going to bring Mashiach with people who are going to sit around eating special sort of, those things you throw in the soup, what do you call it? No, almonds, soup almonds, what do you call it?
Soup nuts.
Huh?
Soup nuts.
Yeah, soup nuts, but there's a special type. It's called Greifen something like that place. There brings it's a very special type they drop into the soup, posh places. I don't even know what it looks like. But the Rebbe said, Nit van a zolche mensch was stellen zich af der. That's a big by them, that they should have adopted in their soup, not from them. Are we going to bring Mashiach? I think they stayed out in one of the seasons. From the Rebbe, Melech Mashiach. The Rebbe says only people are like those guys with the Arizal. They didn't say, oh no, let's go home and ask our wives, let's go here, let's go there. The whole kash is that was on peace and all. You can't just go away and leave your wife on Friday night, just leave her alone. So we said you have to know that the Rebbe, he also knows what's a shul. He also knows what's a kash al pidin. And the reason I'll take it was what's a kash al pidin. He knew what was al pidin and what not. He said, you have to just be l'maylam and medina v'akbara. That's what the Rebbe brings over. That's what's written here. You can be all Makushan, you can manage from that's the point all the way down to the lowest point, all according to what's knowledge. Fine, it's a huge big chain descent. It's even got higher points in it. The Rebbe said those high points are also part of that whole idea. It's all unlimited. How do you call it? Be'eruvan, how do you call it? Be'eruvan mugbal, how do you say? Be'eruvan mugbal, how do you say? Limited, proprietary limited.
Look, limited guarantee.
Yeah, Be'eruvan mugbal, how do they say it? Proprietary limited. Yeah, they say this in this firm, Ba'am, no? Be'eruvan mugbal. That's all Be'eruvan mugbal. It's hoich, it's kosher, it's gewaldig. But the Rebbe is just waiting. He said, come on, guys, let's go beyond all this now. Bring out a chodah. Kedeliebe, etwas a tiefer Sach. You can't just sit around. Because a little bit of tshuva will also bring you to chokhmah. But that's all. The Rebbe said, yes, but I know about that already. I already fixed that in my will. I told him my rotzen right from the beginning. You're not doing anything really for me, says the Rebbe. I will get a liebe, that's ja. And they call it a bissel of Meshuggah. That's what we need nowadays. We need a few Meshuggahim to get up and shrei. Do you realize what's happening? I can't talk anymore. Because if I did, I'd probably get into things which would make me breaks anyway. So we'll just finish on a good note. We all have to be, and that's what the Friedrich Rebbe is, Stus to Kedusha. That's the whole thing from the Basila. Stus to Kedusha. Good. Okay, guys, have a good evening. I think I'm going to go and be in the hall with somebody whenever. Well, that's the technique. That's got to stop. We've got to bring that. So I've got to double quick up the guys. Okay, I'll see you.
It makes Samach Shilitz Halalev so much easy thing. It's just the small lift. Speak for yourself, mate. Well, that's not what I